Don't lecture me with your $30 haircut. Goku dies! Hello everybody, Tyrone the God 3 here, and welcome to part 7 of the Dragon Ball Z movie reviews. And in this review, we will be doing a review of the movie Super Android 13, a Dragon Ball Z movie which, much like Tree of Might and several other movies, is Tree of Might and World's Strongest. It's another one of those confusing when the hell did this movie exactly take place movies. Well, I'm here to clarify that and do the review of the summary and how I feel about it. So, sorry about the long wait in between. And I think that was a nice standoff, like a nice rest between it, because believe it or not, reviewing all of these movies, going through all of the summary of the entire plot, and then showing how I feel about them takes more time than a lot of people would think. First of all, I had to make sure I still remembered these movies in a well enough detail in order to tell them back accurately through the summaries. And also, I had to really see how I felt about Super Android 13 as a whole, because this was one of those movies that, give or take, was okay for its time. I have the physical movie. It was given to me as a gift long time ago. Also, it was one of those moments where my internet was being jackholish because I'm in a dorm now, and the dorm's internet is very clunky. But anyway, to the timeline. The timeline this movie takes place, well, this is one of the most confusing ones, just like Tree of Might and World's Strongest. But this movie's in the timeline takes place in the timeline that followed the last timeline. The one I've been saying before, the timeline of World's Strongest, Tree of Might, all the ones where Goku beat Frieza via the Spear Bomb instead of turning Super Saiyan and beating him that way. Only here's what's happened now. It's after the events of Cooler, obviously, and Vegeta's turned Super Saiyan and everything. But Trunks, here's the thing. Trunks, that's what makes everything really confusing right now. Trunks is in this movie. And this is Trunks' first appearance in a Dragon Ball Z movie. Now, Trunks is Super Saiyan, Vegeta Super Saiyan, and Goku Super Saiyan. So this would have you probably think, alright, this takes place in a time right after the androids have been released. However, a certain someone was having a heart virus during that time, which means Goku wouldn't even be here. Also, so you would probably think to yourself, alright, this takes place after Goku got healed, correct? Wrong, because when Goku got healed from his little heart virus, Gohan and the others were still dealing with the android scenario and Cell, which means the minute Goku got fully rested and returned, he immediately took Gohan, Trunks, and Vegeta to the hyperbolic time chamber so that they could train for Cell and the rest of the androids. So, it doesn't take place in that time. It doesn't take place around that time in the main storyline either. The main issues here basically are the fact that Goku's fully healed, Trunks is still in this area, Gohan's still a kid and hasn't turned Super Saiyan yet, and the androids have already been released in this movie as seen in the beginning. So when does this movie take place? It took me a lot of thinking and a lot of putting plot together and going around and seeing the events that take place in both this timeline, with the main timeline, and the timeline in which Goku beat Frieza with the Spirit Bomb, but I think I've finally come to a conclusion. Basically, long story short, after Goku beats Frieza with the Spirit Bomb and the events of Cooler's revenge and return of Cooler end up happening, what ends up happening is that Trunks comes in, and since Goku never landed on planet Yardrat, or at least had to travel into space in order to see Yardrat and stay there for a long amount of time, his body never caught on to that heart virus that he was supposed to get. However, Trunks did appear and was able to warn Goku about the whole androids coming to the planet Earth. So Goku was able to efficiently train and prepare for it along with the other Z warriors. However, the only difference is that Goku never gains the heart virus in this timeline because, like I said before, he never landed on planet Yardrat in order to obtain it, or in order to get infected by it. This would mean that around this time, Vegeta had already turned Super Saiyan because he was the second to turn Super Saiyan, and then Trunks was the third person in order to turn Super Saiyan, with Gohan still not being able to turn Super Saiyan, period. Around this timeline, it would seem that the androids had been released, however, they hadn't shown any real threat to anybody at all, and since Goku and the others couldn't sense the androids, there was no real reason for them to go in and fight them at all. In this timeline, the androids showed to be released, however, like I said before, they didn't end up harming anybody. They more or less just became free and failed experiments. So as a backup contingency plan, Dr. Gero in this timeline created androids 13, 14, and 15. So that's how the events go. Trunks lands on this back in this timeline in order to help the Z Warriors fight against the androids. However, there is no androids this time, so Trunks' predictions probably were completely wrong. And with that said, the movie basically begins. The movie starts off with Trunks, Master Roshi, Oolong, and Krillin waiting in a catwalk area at the mall. They're waiting here because there's apparently supposed to be a swimsuit bikini beauty pageant or whatever happening at the mall. However, they didn't check the date and they realized that it was next week instead of the week that they decided to wait. While that's happening, Chi-Chi is fighting off against a bunch of angry mothers trying to get a bunch of clothes because it's a big shopping sale or whatever. And Goku's comically carrying all of the bags, like giant towers of just clothes and in bags. Meanwhile, they all decide to go to the food court. Once all of the Z Warriors, well, most of the Z Warriors are at the food court, they're just all chilling and having a good time. But while this is happening, androids 14 and 15 walk into the mall and start destroying everything in their wake in search for Goku. While everybody's enjoying themselves and eating, Goku notices that there's a huge explosion that happens on the floor below them. Goku's able to use instant transmission to quickly save a lot of the civilians, as well as Trunks and Gohan and Krillin as they were able to save a bunch of the people as well. Then Goku immediately notices Android 14 and 15 attacking Goku. Once Goku ends up fighting off against them, he notices that he can't sense their energy. Why? Because they're inorganic. With that said, Trunks is able to find out that these are androids as well, and Goku tells Trunks that we can't fight in this city because if we try to fight in this city, a bunch of innocent people will be hurt in the crossfire. So Trunks agrees with Goku, in order to fly off somewhere else in order to fight off against the androids, and the androids follow. This is the most odd placement for a city because apparently it must have been placed conveniently close to the Arctic. Either that or Goku went really far in order to make sure that no humans would get hurt. I'm not sure exactly how close the Arctic is to West City, but good God, that was the location that this fight decides to take place, and pretty much the rest of this movie. Gohan wants to fly in after Goku and Trunks in order to assist him in the fight, but Chi-Chi bitches him out and says no. However, Gohan gets angry and decides to shoot off and fly into the fray instead. Krillin comically saying I'm behind him 100%, but Chi-Chi ends up kicking him in the butt, forcing him in order to go after and protect Gohan. Meanwhile, though, while this is happening, Goku ends up continuing his fight with the androids as well as Trunks, and then Vegeta interrupts everything. Oh, and Android 13 finally reveals himself as well as to be this southerner. Yeah, it's kind of weird. Android 13 is a southerner-like accent, while Android 14 sports this, like, black person type accent, whatever. And he's really short and purple. And then Android 15 shows to be like this Native American looking dude that doesn't really talk. So with that said, Vegeta comes into the fray and ends up fighting off against Android 14, while Trunks ends up fighting off against Android 15. That leaves Goku to fight off against Android 13, and for a while, all three of the warriors end up looking like they're losing. Gohan finally catches up to the fray to see what's going on, but he's only a spectator in this fight. And while Goku, Trunks, and Vegeta seem like they're losing, in the middle of the fight, Vegeta ends up transforming Super Saiyan as well as Trunks and Goku. And then Vegeta, since he turns Super Saiyan, ends up beating Android 14. Same goes for Trunks with Android 15. Goku, however, is evenly matched with Android 13, and the two seem to be even in power now instead of Goku taking the upper hand. And while this is happening, Goku actually looks like he's about to get mutilated by one of Android 13's blasts. However, it ends up getting blocked and knocked out of the way thanks to Piccolo. Well, and then Vegeta and Trunks come in, and basically Android 13 is completely outmatched and outpowered at this point. Android 13 finally realizes that 14 and 15 have been destroyed and decides to take their machine parts, like the weird little machine pods and the chips that were inside of their heads, and decides to use these parts in order to transform him into something that looks completely not like his first form at all. However, he is now Super Android 13 and is able to pretty much annihilate all of the Z Warriors completely at once. Piccolo, Goku, Trunks, and Vegeta don't stand a chance against Super Android 13, and none of their attacks are showing to do any physical damage to them. This is the start of the Dragon Ball Z movies, in which the Z Warriors punch a giant hulking guy, and this hulking guy doesn't feel any damage whatsoever and swats the Z Warriors away like flies. I'm not really particularly fond of this fashion of DBZ movies, as it continues a bunch of other times, aka the next movie too. And I'm not really a big fan of these. Why? Because it's not really interesting to watch the Z Warriors fight a wall. A wall that can punch back. It's not that interesting whatsoever. I mean, I can get that Super Android 13 is really strong in this form, far stronger than the Z Warriors are, but don't make the fight so one-sided to the point where it looks like the Z Warriors aren't getting a hit in edgewise. That just makes it look boring. I hate fights like these, and there's tons of them in this series. But I'll save my more of those comments for the next review. Anyway, it seems like Super Android 13's whooping all of the Z Warriors' asses. Goku's especially. Why? Because all of the androids were programmed to kill Goku. That's why. So, Super Android 13 tries to beat the ever-living shit out of Goku, but Goku just won't stay down. Because why? He's the main character. But this does release one of the most unique moves I've seen in Dragon Ball Z in a long time, the SS Deadly Bomber. It was actually given that name in a video game. It was given that name in Dragon Ball Z Tenkaichi 2, I believe. Yeah, regardless, the SS Deadly Bomber, a pretty cool looking attack, might I add, and it has the ability to follow people. Yeah. So, anyway, while Goku's getting his ass whooped, Gohan tries to come in and, was like, hey, get away from my dad. And Krillin does nothing in this movie. I'm dead serious. He doesn't take any part in this movie at all. He more or less was just a spectator. Anyway, Goku thinks of the idea the only way to beat this guy is to use the Spirit Bomb. So Goku decides to rise up out of the water, because that's where he was in the first place when he got after he got his ass whooped. He gets up out of the water and gathers energy for the Spirit Bomb. Super Android 13 notices that Goku's gathering energy for the Spirit Bomb, and Gohan tries to fight off against him as well. However, before Gohan gets the ever-living shit kicked out of him, Piccolo comes in and saves him at last minute. Piccolo notices that Goku is gathering energy for the Spirit Bomb and tells everybody, hey, we need to help Goku gather energy for the Spirit Bomb. Super Android 13, like I said, notices the Spirit Bomb already and even knows exactly what it does, probably because of the information gained by the supercomputer that's in Dr. Gero's basement. Yeah, because earlier in the movie, Super Android 13 revealed that Dr. Gero died a long time ago, but his supercomputer keeps constant data on Goku and the others. It even went to a fact that when the androids were fighting Goku and the others, it was able to sense Goku, Vegeta, and Trunks' movements and know exactly what type of attacks they were going to do before they did them, and was able to promptly predict them and beat them. However, when Trunks, Vegeta, and Goku turned Super Saiyan, the power limit was too much to handle because it only gathered data from the fights that they had on Earth and not the fights that they had on Namek, in which Goku was able to gain more power plus the others, and then later gain Super Saiyan after the fight with Cooler. Anyway, while Goku's still gathering up energy for the Spirit Bomb, Vegeta and Trunks also put their hand in order to bide some more time, and they successfully bide enough time in order for Goku to gather the energy he needs in order to complete the Spirit Bomb. Super Android 13 charges towards Goku to stop him from launching the Spirit Bomb. However, instead of launching the Spirit Bomb, Goku ends up transforming Super Saiyan and absorbing the Spirit Bomb's energy within his own body. This creates one of Goku's most infamous attacks, the Super Dragon Fist. Goku is able to gather all of the energy inside of his body plus the Spirit Bomb's energy to create a massive super strong attack, and is able to punch Super Android 13 dead in the stomach and completely annihilate him, destroy him, and he blows up altogether. After that's done, the Z Warriors celebrate the fact that they ended up defeating him. All is well that ends well. They all return home except for Vegeta and Piccolo. They're sitting on an iceberg and they're wondering, is this completely over? Vegeta comically says, not till the fish jumps, and the fish jumps right after he says that, and he says it confirms that it's over. Super Android 13 has been killed. So that's Super Android 13, a movie that while is okay in the aspect of androids and the motif that Dr. Gero keeps a supercomputer, which is something he would logically do, is a rather short movie that I wish could have went by a little bit longer and added a little bit more on plot emphasis. The fight more or less just starts the minute the movie starts, but I mean, there is the comical scenes with Goku and the other Z Warriors at the mall, but the issue I have with this movie, like I said, is the Super Android 13 transformation, in which Goku and the others try to fight Super Android 13, but are practically useless until Goku pulls a Deus Ex Machina attack. I don't like villains like these. I mean, granted, they're interesting enough. Super Android 13 has only saved himself because he apparently had an accent, making him a little bit more dimensional than the other villains, but even then, he was just there. I like to know the fact that Dr. Gero potentially made some other androids in order to be contingency plans for if his first androids failed, but it seems like these androids are much weaker than 17 and 18, just considering the fact that Goku, Vegeta, and Trunks were able to easily beat them on Super Saiyan rather than turning a level higher. Granted, Goku was able to have his difficulties with Super Android 13 and beating him, but even Super Android 13 didn't prove to be that much of a challenge once Goku found a solution to beat him. This movie overall is okay. It does bring off the fact that there's more Super Saiyans in the series now, rather than just Goku being the Super Saiyan or Goku and Vegeta. Now we have 3 Super Saiyans, and in the next movie we'll have 4. But even that, still, it's not... How do I put this? This movie was missing something. Yeah, the supercomputer plot was a good idea, but even still, like I said, there wasn't much really to this movie outside of the fact that they had to destroy the androids. It works for what it is, and it definitely helps Dr. Gero's plot go further, because if you hadn't noticed, Dr. Gero's made a lot of androids to combat Goku. Not just the infamous 17 and 18 androids, but several different androids, Cell included. So it's nice to see that these exist. And like I said, the timeline is probably the thing that makes people's heads scratch the most, which takes a lot away from this movie, because 17 and 18 were released. However, when they were released, the Z Warriors saw that these androids were released and were able to witness it. However, in the movie, when 17 and 18 were released, we don't see the Z Warriors at all. But in this moment, like I said, it can't be after Goku was cured of his heart virus, because after Goku was cured of his heart virus, Cell was around. And you would think that Cell would take the time to absorb 17 and 18, while the Z Warriors were distracted fighting Super Android 13. And when the hell did they get the time to enjoy themselves at the mall, knowing that 2 deadly androids were out potentially destroying the world? This is only because 17 and 18 decided to take the peaceful route this time and not destroy anybody's lives. These androids decided that they won't do what Dr. Gero says and instead would be free. It was probably because they weren't fully programmed to be destructive at this point. And they decided to more or less live their lives, just like in after the Majin Buu saga, where you don't really see Android 17, but he's still around. Yeah, I would definitely say this is the hardest movie to place within the timeline. Fortunately for those, this movie takes place in an alternate timeline, so you don't have to really worry about it anymore. At least if you've watched this review, then you would know that there's an alternate timeline in which most of these movies have happened so far. The next movie I review will be in the main timeline, though, so we finally get to go back to the original anime's timeline, rather than the timeline in which Goku had beat Frieza in an alternate way. So, with that said, I hate to say that this review is really short. How I feel about this movie is very meh. I wouldn't place it on the top 5, but I wouldn't place it in the top 5 worst either. It was just a movie. Like I said, I'm not really a big fan of villains that don't get phased at all when they get punched, because it makes for a boring looking movie. When I was watching Dead Zone and I noticed that Garlic Jr. was a very bulky villain, he was still able to potentially get beat by Piccolo and Goku when they decided to remove their weights and work together. He wasn't just this big hulking villain that couldn't be attacked at all. They were still able to effectively work together and find an alternate way to beat him. Whereas in this movie, the only thing that can even touch Super Android 13 was the Super Dragon Fist. I will say that it's kind of cool to show Goku defeating a villain other than using the Spirit Bomb, to show that Goku has several different ultimate attacks besides just Spirit Bomb. And it was cool to note that Goku was able to keep his sanity even while in Super Saiyan mode and hold the Spirit Bomb. Krillin even points this out. They said that Krillin noticed that Goku was able to use the Spirit Bomb even while in Super Saiyan, meaning that his heart was still pure. It's something, I guess. Anyway, I know a lot of people are probably going to be really interested in the next movie that I'm doing a review of, because it's a fan favorite between a lot of DBZ fans. I'll tell you honestly how I feel about it during the review, but the next movie I will be reviewing is Dragon Ball Z Movie 8 Legendary Super Saiyan Broly. I'll see you all then, everybody. Tyrone the God 3 out. I'm going to catch so much shit for that movie when I do the review for it.